What is going on, Small Gains family? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I have got Olive here with me today. You'll probably know them best as Yoga with Olive if you've heard of them before. And the way that we actually became internet friends was one of my one-to-one people told me that they absolutely loved their yoga sessions on YouTube because they felt really inclusive. And when I checked them out, I thought their page was awesome. I think they followed me back, but either way, we have chatted and been a bit matey online ever since, and I floated the idea of us having a chat. Stars aligned, here we are. We put the worlds to right a little bit. Both of us actually went to the same gym at the same time in Brighton, which was an interesting flavour. Sadly, we never bumped into each other. We talk about Olive's approach to training, which is mixed movement. It's not miles away from hybrid, but I'd say it's a little less on the strength and run side and a little more free in terms of the modalities of movement they combine. So we had a really nice chat about that. We also talk about ED recovery, how we've both intentionally gone through periods of overtraining when we've had a particularly hard time with our relationship with food, and that's transferred over to exercise. And we talk about Olive's upbringing, going from being a very sporty person in Dubai to then leaving their whole family behind, going to uni, how they discovered yoga. And we also talk about the harder things when it comes to yoga, if it can be an ethical practice, how they try and make theirs ethical. Lots of gold in here today. I hope you enjoy it. Let's do the thing. Welcome to Small Gains, the inclusive strength and running podcast where we celebrate progress over perfection and chase intentional incremental gains in our strength and running. Here we believe that small consistent steps lead to big transformations in our training, our lifestyle, and our overall well-being. If you're new here, welcome to the most wholesome corner of the fitness industry. If you've always felt a little bit like an outcast to mainstream fitness norms, welcome. That is why this exists. You're going to fit in amazing here, I promise. Yeah, so that gym, I was like terrified to go there.
Right.
And then it was so close to where I lived because I lived above that plant collection coffee shop. And then when I got there, so many bodybuilders, and I naturally started following a lot of them because I was like, start of my fitness journey.
Yeah.
But I was also peak eating disorder. And
Right.
they were all sharing photos, a giant trigger warning for anyone that's listening to this, but they would tag all their photos like tanorexic. And I very quickly learned that I just needed to keep my head down and engage a lot less with any of the kind of like bodybuilders or influencers or people that work there because it made me feel a bit strange. But you train there now and it's a good vibe.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there since the end of 2018. And I think the main reason I've stuck there is because it is one of the best gyms in Brighton for the equipment that I need. Like, Central Brighton doesn't really have great gyms. Like, there's Pure Gym, there was a Fitness First, there are all those like chain gyms, which is fine, but Underground has specialized powerlifting, Olympic lifting, great calisthenics, and they have loads of machines. So I think I've just stayed there purely for that. And I do quite like people watching in there because there's such a diverse range of people who do train, like from bodybuilders, from powerlifters, a lot more calisthenics now FI rocks, and also some boxers. So I quite like seeing the diversity of people that do come to the gym.
Yeah.
It can be quite inspiring at times as well, just to see what different people are doing and what modalities they're training. But I tend to stay away from the bodybuilding section, if I'm honest.
Yeah, honestly, like I think if I went now, that would probably be the gym I would go to in Brighton for all the reasons that you said, like functional fitness, rigs, lots of machines, perfect for any sort of like multiple modalities, everything. It would have been perfect. And we've got like similar, I think we've got similar like Ollie lifting, CrossFit backgrounds in a sense as well, but we don't necessarily strictly do that now. So it all would have been perfect. I think I was just so anxious and unaware of what I was doing and looking for representation. And oh my God, what if I'd seen you? I probably would have needed that. That would have been amazing.
Probably would have crossed paths, but at such different phases of our life, because
Yeah.
I was also I was post eating disorder at this point, still like fairly early stages of recovery. But I think my sort of indoctrination into the more gym-based culture was all to do with a bodybuilding aesthetic as well.
Yeah.
And I never felt like my body or who I am as a person was represented in that space either. Like there was a big, big missing link. So I think in part that's inspired the way I train and the way I move now, because I wanted to create something quite different.
Yeah,
So
exactly
yeah.
that. That was my first experience in a more like indie gym that wasn't like
Yeah.
a pure gym, a gym group, a Sports Direct, a leisure centre. Those were
Mm.
all the gyms that I went to like as soon as I was old enough to start going. And that was like my first experience of something like that. And I think the time that I went, it was so focused on bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And I bet that probably has shifted a bit as well to an extent.
I think it's shifted a bit because there are other practices now getting more limelight, particularly like high rocks, I
Yeah.
think, right now. But I still think, and this is something that I've been navigating recently, people's perception, if you're outside of the health and wellness and fitness and gym space, people's perception, if you're predominantly a PT or someone who trains at the gym quite a lot, there's this expectation that you have a very particular body shape and body type and aesthetic, and that's always modeled off bodybuilders. And there's no room for people to look different. And I had a conversation with someone who comes to my class and is just sort of loosely along the line of saying, like, I like your physique because it doesn't look like you lift. And it really, really threw me off for like multiple reasons. And I did a post about this, kind of unpacking like where I think it's gone wrong and why I don't think it's appropriate. But as routines, they're almost expected to have stage ready bodies, which is never representation, like isn't representative of anyone. Like who regularly, your average gym person, it's just not, that way.
It's almost like I think what people think a gym body looks like, they're imagining a competitive bodybuilder. And obviously like the more time you spend in the fitness world, the more you realize like no one looks like that unless that's the sport that they do. And depending on the level that they do it at, obviously depends on the amount of extremity it is and whether they're on steroids or juicing. Yeah, it's wild, isn't it? That's such a weird crossover that we were both at that gym though. Like I used to train in the day.
Yeah, so
like, and if you did, we must have been in there at the same time. But then if I had seen a tattooed, slightly alternative looking person like me, I'm so sure that I would have noticed, because that wasn't something I saw a lot of. But then at the same time, I know that every time I went in there, I was so anxious and so self-conscious that I would just go in, lift my weights and go. And I would take up as little space as possible. I wouldn't dare look up from what I was doing. So the chances are we crossed paths. I just maybe couldn't even lift my head up to even notice that there might have been someone that wasn't a bodybuilder in there.
I understand that though, because like I used to stick to the functional area and only sort of navigate that space purely because what I was comfortable with was mainly body weight movement coming from a yoga background.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things I ended up doing was within that space, more body weight stuff. So I started doing like my walkovers, more handstand stuff, dragon squat training, and getting more comfortable, like staying in that realm and sticking to what I was comfortable doing. And similar to yourself, like keeping myself quite small and limiting what I could and couldn't do. Yeah, so maybe we would have crossed paths, maybe we didn't. Maybe we were just hiding in different areas of the gym.
Yeah, like I was just like on a little bench by the mirror. Like I used to do the same one every time, as far away, and you was in the functional bit. Totally. So you grew up playing lots of different sports, and then you ended up shifting to yoga. What got you there from growing up playing sport, like being competitive with it? Was that when you were a lot younger? And then how did you end up just doing solely yoga?
Yeah, so I've got a background. I horse rode for 10 years, which I loved. I did quite a lot of like one day events, and show jumping. From there, in the background to all of that, I played around with a little bit of ballet and tap when I was pretty young. I did gymnastics for maybe 5 years from the age of like 7 to 12. But then throughout high school, so from year 7 to year 13, I was a competitive swimmer, track and field athlete, and netball player. So those were like the three main sports that I ended up doing. So I've always kind of been involved in movement in some kind of way, but they were all very much team orientated sports. Even though swimming and track and field, you have the aspects of being individual, there were obviously like team aspects involved in that with like relays, or you're all doing it as a team to like compete against like other colleges and stuff. Then when I went to university, I played a little bit of netball, but I was quite put off by the netball society there. I found them really, really intimidating. And I wasn't super comfortable at that stage of my life anyways. But I picked up yoga when I was 17 and a half. So like coming into A levels, like getting ready for exams and everything. And because everything at school had stopped in terms of like sports and the competitions, they had all kind of ceased. I was kind of like, I need to move. I want to move. At the time, I found like Nike's HIIT training app. So I was following along with those quite a lot. And that was sort of my first introduction into maybe like HIIT style training. From there, I also found, I don't know if you remember the Bikini Body Guide by Kayla Itsinas, maybe?
That rings a bell.
Yeah. So also followed that. And that was not great for where I was at the time, because this sort of fueled the start of my eating disorder and the overtraining that came with it. But in the midst of all of this, I started following quite a lot of yoga practitioners on Instagram who actually lived in the same area as me. So I grew up in Dubai and I found 3 local people who were practicing yoga. At the time, Instagram was still just like photos. So I saw these really cool shapes and I was like, I want to try do it. So I ended up collecting like a little, I guess, backlog of poses and try to recreate them myself. And it felt like puzzle piecing most of the time. I would see these photos, do it myself, see how I could link them into a chain. And that's how I kind of created my yoga practice. I never really followed anyone on YouTube or went to any studios for maybe the best part of 3 years. So everything was self-taught right at the start. I would practice like every day for like 90 minutes and just see what I could do. And it felt good because it felt like what I used to do in gymnastics. It would kind of replicate some of the movements. Some things are a bit familiar, and I wanted to come back to the flexibility that I once had. But within all of this, there was like the spike in my eating disorder. So there was under-eating, over-exercising, and I had a really negative relationship with movement at that point.
The self-taught stuff is so cool, because obviously, like, you know, some of the shapes and positions are so hard and require so much strength, but it makes complete sense with like the gymnastics background and stuff. Would you say like the competitive sport when you were growing up, did that kind of fuel the eating disorder, and was that then something that became more prominent, I guess, as you got older, or was it something that kind of came after that, I guess?
I think there's definitely aspects of the competitiveness bleeding into the early days of me practicing yoga and feeling like I was at competition with myself. Like every time I kind of came to practice, the only way that I saw progression was that if I was able to maybe hold a pose for longer or get like deeper into it, which I've obviously now learned since doing my training and teaching that that's just not the point. But that's the kind of background that I was coming from. And there was definitely competitive aspects within the other training that I did, and also the eating every day to eat less and less, and kind of like comparing whatever I ate yesterday to the day like before or whatever it may be. But the biggest overriding factor, I think, for my eating disorder was a sense of like lack of control, that my life was about to change. I was about to leave a country, leave my family like 4,000 miles away and come to university in the UK. And it was also spurred on by like my first heartbreak and not feeling like good enough.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many stresses as well, isn't it? So much change for sure. I think I definitely relate to the control aspect of it with mine as well, and obviously like not feeling good enough, being able to use it as a punishment, but also like almost as a tool to again just like minimize myself, make
Yeah.
myself more and more palatable for sure. I was wondering, what was like the vibe of the yoga practicing world back then? Did that feel like it almost fueled the ED stuff the way a lot of more mainstream folk practiced it, or did you find a lot of more inclusive practices when you were like exploring that? How did that kind of pan out, and how does
Mm.
the yoga practicing world then compare to like what we're in now? I know very little about it. I follow you and maybe two other inclusive queer practitioners, and obviously
Yeah.
like some of the stories that I see online from the three of you make it seem like it can be quite hard to find the right spot to exist in that.
Yeah. So my first sort of exposure to yoga through these three people that I followed, they were all in very white, slim, abled bodies. So then my immediate kind of comparison was, because I would regularly also like take videos of myself to see what I was doing, have a little like reminder of my sessions or whatever it might be. And I would watch them back and be like, yeah, but you don't look like them. Your body doesn't look like that when they're doing this pose. You look completely different. And then that sort of made me feel like I was doing something wrong. There was something at fault with me and how I was moving. So there wasn't like wider representation that I was aware of at the time of bodies that looked more like me, which is completely ironic considering that obviously yoga comes from India and there wasn't any representation from any other like BIPOC practitioners or teachers that I saw online. A lot of the people that seemed to be quite heavily platformed were these people in very slim, abled white bodies. And unfortunately, that's just a way that the West is with a lot of yoga teachers and studios and practitioners. So when I was starting to practice myself, I maybe went to 2 or 3 yoga studios, and I just didn't, I felt so uncomfortable in those spaces, and I could never really pinpoint why. And now I think looking back, I think it's because it felt so culturally inappropriate, the way that certain things were taught. And it just felt like we had borrowed something from a really ancient tradition, but we weren't really like honoring it in an appreciative way. It just felt like it was a kind of trendy thing to take and be like, let's just chant at the beginning, or let's just do Om, or, you know, people were saying namaste, putting their hands together and bowing their heads at the end. And it just felt so alien. So that's why for like a lot of my sort of teaching and exposure, I've just done it myself because I felt quite uncomfortable in spaces. But things have definitely changed. When I went to do my training, I went to India because I wanted to. I wanted to see some family over there and connect to that side of me. And from there, I learned more about the philosophy, the history, more than just the asana, the movement side of yoga. And that sort of enriched my experience of the practice. And that's what led me to want to teach other people when I then came back home. Since then, it's kind of been a little bit of an ongoing battle. I've fallen out with quite a lot of yoga studios in Brighton. I don't know if it's because people can find me quite abrasive because I have quite strong boundaries with certain things and my values are maybe a little bit more outspoken. And there's this big assumption that yoga teachers are quite passive and they can be big pushovers when it comes to like standing up for yourself for X, Y, and Z. But in terms of like the online world, I have seen greater representation now from South Asian teachers and practitioners. There is more talk about making yoga accessible for people who are in disabled bodies or who are in bigger bodies. So there is greater representation, I think, now, and there's bigger discourse about it. Studios, in my opinion, are a little bit behind in actually making spaces inclusive. Like, everyone just slaps on the banner of inclusivity, but it's not actually practiced.
Don't get me started on that. I could go for days. But yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah, like one of my really, really close friends and clients, you may or may not follow her. I don't know if she's one of the three, but her name's Lucy B. Yoga. Fucking amazing yoga teacher. does loads and loads of size inclusivity trainings. And I know she won't mind me talking about this, but she's hosted 2 size inclusivity trainings in Brighton. And I was so upset at how little people went along to it. I was like, also, look, like, I get that people are super busy and everything like that. And yes, it's on a weekend, but the fact that yoga studio owners didn't show up was a massive, like, knife to the chest.
I bet that would be really, really frustrating. And obviously, I spent a lot of time living in Brighton, and the first time I lived there 7 years ago, Brighton was one thing. And when I came back in 2017, it was definitely a different thing. And I don't want to sit here and slate cities that get overly gentrified and push the smaller, more oppressed communities out, because that's maybe pretty much all of them. That's what's happening in the UK, isn't it? I do remember living slightly further out because of affordability, and then noticing over the years that I spent there continuously that the demographic of people that lived around me were white young professionals with money. And I suppose that can probably really dictate what then pops up. The frustrating thing is that they just cater for that. And with the studio stuff, with the boutique fitness studio, like Reformer Pilates, Spin, like small group PT, it's like, I think you have the option to create a community, or you have the option to cater to the type of people that have the money. And I feel like so many small boutique studios become so intimidating because of the culture they create. And I'm guessing for yoga, that must be really rife.
I think, well, I guess just to give you context, in about a kilometer, or not even a kilometer, 500-meter radius of where I live, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fitness spaces, yoga, reformer, and small group PT. That's 7 in like 500 meters off each other. It's crazy how many places are suddenly just popping up here and there and everywhere. And look, I understand it's a capitalistic world. We've got to survive. We've got to open up spaces that we want to have. But I think the biggest issue that I have with it, just because there's more, it doesn't make it inclusive for people, and it doesn't always attract people from minority groups or people who feel underrepresented. So why do we need more when already there's so many issues within the industry? And I think the issue that I have with it is that yoga has lost its heart in the West, and it just seems like a massive commodity. And you just have to look at it with the amount of people going through trainings, like people and yoga schools that are coming up are just churning out more and more and more students every single month. Where are they going to go? There's not that much space for it, but also the demand, I don't believe, is there as much anymore as it used to be maybe 10 years ago. Things are shifting and they're going more towards reformer Pilates and other modalities like high rocks. That's a trending thing right now. That's what people are shifting to. But I think the major issue I have is that we've taken this ancient practice and commodified it. And that's where it sits really uncomfortably with me. And it's something that I've tried to figure out myself for the past 7 years. I'm like, how am I making a living off this practice? But then, playing devil's advocate, the other side is like, yeah, but at least you're able to share it with X, Y, and Z amount of people. And you're able to maybe share a different perspective with them and help in some kind of way. So that's where I can find a little bit of peace. But, that's not everyone's approach to it, I guess.
Yeah, and I think I'm almost about to ask you an impossible question, but let me validate what you've just said slightly. The whole reason I know who you are and found you was because one of my clients, Harpreet, I know she won't mind me mentioning, told me that she found a really good YouTube yoga person that was inclusive and showed me you. Yeah. And she was buzzing that she found that. And, she referenced it a lot in her check-ins and we spoke about it. And, that's how I found you and started following you. So the fact that, you're creating that for people that you don't even know about with what you've built on YouTube is so
Yeah.
cool. And I can definitely see the conflict that comes with like ethical practice. It's maybe not something that I experience in the same way what I do, but I guess the hard unanswerable question that I want to ask before we move on is like, is there a way for people to ethically practice and offer yoga in the Western world?
I think it absolutely is, but it requires a lot of work and a lot of like honest reflection. And if I'm being honest with myself, I think I can do still so much more. Like there's still a lot of gaps in my knowledge and perhaps in the ways in which I teach that I do want to fill. And it's an ongoing bit of work essentially. But I think it requires a big shift in the way that the industry is run. And I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. There are way too many overarching systems of oppression that just aren't going to let it happen. So yeah, I do have hope, and there are teachers that I, look up to, like Lucy, like Scotty, who are doing work in order to make it more inclusive and to break down these systems. And there are other South Asian teachers who are getting bigger and bigger platforms now and who are talking about this, which is nice to see that sort of like shift as well. But I think it's going to be a really long journey, and it's one of those things that has to be started at the individual's level. But I think a lot of yoga studios have to do so much work in order for their cultural appreciation to come through, which I do understand is challenging in the societies that we live in, like out in the West, when, you've got bills to pay and you've got kids to feed and you've got food and all of that to consider. But there are certain things that we can be more sensitive to. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so multifaceted when we factor in the world we live in, isn't it? But I appreciate you trying to answer it. If you do have 5 minutes to drop a big list of practitioners that you love, I will drop them in the show notes, put links and stuff like that. So if there's anyone that wants more to follow, if they're interested in that world, they can find them. The three that I follow is Scotty, and a local person in Leeds who I did a yin yoga class with, who I felt like was just so inclusive and wonderful, and it surprised me. And they were queer, so I was like, I'm following him. I think a lot of people will explore yoga as a practice and almost be like, how do I know who to start and where to follow? And then the algorithm just sets you up for then breeding a certain type of face and body. From yoga, you now do mixed movement, which it gives me hybrid vibes in the sense that you're doing mixed modalities of fitness. Like you're doing contrasting different modalities of fitness. So if we look at your mixed movement training, what is it made up of right now and how do you structure it?
So the mixed movement that I do also kind of leads into the modalities that I coach. So there's obviously yoga asana, which can range from vinyasa, it can range from yoga nidra, which is essentially like a sleeping type of meditation, which is really, really beautiful, to yin yoga. So there's quite a lot under the yoga asana umbrella that I do. Then when it comes to my strength training, I have a mixture of Olympic lifts in there, some heavier sort of compound lifts like, your deadlift, your squat, all of that. There's a little bit of hypertrophy and machine and free weights and bodybuilding in there as well. I'm trying to involve more sprinting because that's the only cardio I really enjoy. And then there's some plyometric training and a lot of recently more Cali work. So whether I'm on like a straight bar, parallel bars, or rings as well. So all my strength training, I do have a coach as well. And I've worked with Chloe for like 4 years. She's got a background in CrossFit and Olympic lifting. So we have a very, very collaborative relationship in terms of how we kind of structure and play around with things, which is super fun. And I've learned so much from her. And then other modalities that I do and also coach, I play around with quite a lot of mobility training. Because I'm hypermobile, I don't need the range, I need the strength in those ranges. And then I also do a lot of animal flow or floor work, which I train in animal flow, but the floor work component is just what I've seen online and just seeing how I can play around with things. And then it also comes to skill training. So that's more specifically like inversion work. So we've got handstands, any arm balances, headstands, or if people want to learn like a different skill, maybe if it's on the rings, like more Cali flow stuff, like I'm also sort of in that realm too. So those are all the movements that I do, but I also, in my own personal time, I've started exploring more pole dance, which is really fun. And I have no intention to teach that, and I don't want to, because it's selfishly just for me. And I think there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, 100%. That's awesome. You do so many different things, and obviously they all layer into each other for sure. If we took like a conventional week of training that felt like kind of normal for
Yeah.
you, what would it look like? Talk me through it.
So I try to program my strength days for Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And Monday is a snatch focus day with some heavy accessories. And it's mainly like P-bar flow stuff. Then Wednesday is clean focus day, another heavy lift to support that, and ring flow. And then Friday is the hypertrophy bodybuilding session with some sprinting at the end. And I kind of have and give myself a little bit of space for play in all three sessions, like if I have time and if I have capacity and energy and everything like that. Saturday is currently my pole day. It's mainly the only class that I can go to. So that's when I train pole. And I do have one at home. It depends if I feel up for it or not.
Yeah.
That's all then self-directed, and it feels like it's sometimes I just don't have the capacity to think about it. And then sort of in the days in between, it does flit about, depends on my energy levels, but I try to practice yoga maybe 2 or 3 times a week when I have the space to do so. Again, it can look like anything. It can be a 20-minute session, it could be an hour, it could be me just lying down for 15 minutes. And handstands are kind of like thrown in throughout the week as well.
Handstands, absolute bane of my life. I find being upside down so alien.
Me and running.
I haven't had them in for a little while, and
Mm.
I know that as soon as winter comes and I'm maybe doing a little bit less long endurance chipper work, my coach might sneak them back in for me. But it'll be quite nice coming back to them, hopefully having gained a bit of strength in other areas that might translate. I love that you have like your Monday, Wednesday, Friday structure. You have your fun pole class on a Saturday, and then everything else is just a bit more intuitive based on playtime. And that's
Yeah.
really cool. And I guess with a lot of the skill work and the yoga, that can kind of lend quite well. I suppose like both of us being self-employed, it helps. It's very similar. It's very similar to me in the sense that like I do 4 main sessions that my coach gives me. And then if I want to do more around it, if I want to do something with a friend, I want to swim, if I just fancy a play session, then I can throw that in, time and capacity dependent. I think that's a really nice way to be able to explore like the multiple modalities when you're not like competitive pro athlete vibes, I guess.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's a balance between the consistency as well and the ability to be a little bit more like flexible with my training and play around with that. I think historically, if things are too regimented and too strict, it does worry me a little bit that I'll fall back into previous patterns of overtraining. So I think having this blend kind of keeps me at a nice level of groundedness with it all.
When you look back on how you used to overtrain and like your mindset to doing that, like the reasons you maybe did that for or why you felt you should, what is now different? What has shifted in your approach from like a mindset point of view?
Yeah. So when I used to overtrain and like train every day, it was always because I was searching for a solution to not dislike myself so much. I was so insecure and uncomfortable in my body that all my training was based around fear and was like, if you don't do this, everything in your head is going to spin in a really negative way. So it was all based out of fear and all based out of guilt. And I was masking it all behind, yeah, but I'm moving so much, I'm training, like I'm healthy, I'm this, I'm that. But the reality of it was the complete opposite. And what changed for me was working with my coach and kind of unpacking a lot of my historical reasoning behind my training when I was in the eating disorder, sort of coming out on the other side of it and having physically recovered, I was still mentally very much stuck in that same mindset. And I didn't want that to come with me now as I started entering like this new realm of training. So a lot of the work that we did was understanding why I have guilt. And it did take quite a long time to be okay with like missing a session or, having a session drop further down in the week or whatever it was still like, I'm not good enough. I can't believe I did that. Like all this horrible negative talk, which you would never say to a client or a friend. And recently, what I've started realizing is the guilt is no longer associated with negativity. It's more the training that I do is there because it's a form of self-care. And it's a way for me to come back into myself, come back into my body, spend a bit of time with myself. So now when I feel guilty about training, it's more because I haven't given myself that time in the week just for me. Because again, coaching is so outwardly driven. There's so much that you're giving constantly to people. And that those 2 hours in the day where I train is just for myself to kind of top that back up. And if I don't have that, I can very noticeably feel myself feeling a little bit flatter. So that's how, my perspective has changed with it quite a bit.
That's so relatable to probably the way I used to think about it and how I think about it now. I think it was always out of fear that if I didn't do it, I would continue to be looked at or treated the way I was. So I needed to do it to put myself in a small, societally accepted, slim body. And that was the fear. It was never about how I wanted to feel. It was about how I wanted other people to feel about me.
Yeah.
And, you can spend 20 million years unpacking that, which is what my therapist is for. She's very good. But being able to move from a place where you're like, I'm doing this for these reasons, these like external reasons, and then being like, actually, this is all for me and I control it. There's nothing I should be doing. All of the things that I'm doing, I get to choose to do. I get to be in control of them. And then when you miss a session, it's like, I really wish I'd had that time to go and do that because that would have been nice for me, as opposed to, I can't believe I didn't do that session. I'm the worst person alive. I'm now going to shame and punish myself. But then also that's going to make me not work out for 3 weeks because I'm going to put myself in a hole that doesn't feel good. And the last podcast episode was all about auto-regulation. So this is being in very, very well with learning to shift your perspective to approaching training based on what you want out of it, how you feel on every different day, in every different mood, isn't it? And doing it from a place of punishment or shame is not an enjoyable way to move through the world or live your life. It just feels so heavy.
Yeah, it feels heavy, and then it just creates this really horrible cycle where training is a negative thing to do, and it feels more like a chore or more like a punishment to go and do it rather than something that can and should be enjoyable. And you can gain so much from it, not just like physically, but learn so much about yourself emotionally and mentally, and how you train. And quite a lot of what I learned from my yoga teaching and my yoga practice has like bled into my approach for strength training. And that's inevitably like influenced how I talk to my clients about it as well. And a lot of the work we actually do is rewriting their perspective with training and going to the gym and being around a gym culture that always, you need to be smaller or you need to gain this, you need to gain that. And, for a lot of people, they just want to move better and heal their relationship with their body.
Yeah, move better, have a nice time, feel good. and it doesn't have to be more complicated than that for the most part. If it's just something that you want to be able to do and maintain, for sure. Yeah, 100%. That was so nice to see this episode out. Before we go, I've got a little game for you that I'm introducing for all my guests, and I've very imaginatively called it Small Games. And what I want you to do is essentially design your dream fitness competition for me based on a few guidelines that I'm going to give you. There are only 3 workouts. They can be really long, really short, and any form of movement is allowed. It can be anything. So my first question is, where in the world are you going to do it? Putting you on the spot here.
Where in the world would we do it? I'm trying to think of a place where there's not that many bugs, because I'm not a huge bug fan.
Valid.
Yeah, I'm like, creepy crawlies creep me out, big spiders creep me out. So definitely not Australia, definitely not Bali. I want to say an American national park. I want to say Yosemite.
Hell yeah, that is very, very good. So, and it's going to be outdoors.
Yes.
Awesome.
Outdoors.
And so we're at Yosemite. What band or artist is playing live the whole time that the competition is going on? They will get given breaks, but they are soundtracking the whole thing live. Who is it?
Oh, my favorite band are Turnstile, and their new album is fucking incredible. And I just feel like them in Yosemite would go really hard.
That would actually be great. Like, you know, when people weren't doing their workouts, they could crowd surf off a mountain.
Let's go.
I love that new Turnstile record. I'm so excited to see them in November. Are you going to go to that London show as soon as you see it?
Yeah. Are you going to Manchester?
Hell yeah. Yeah, the new Turnstile album is currently my record when I'm in the gym and I'm about to go for a lift, like a PB lift, because I normally listen to audiobooks and podcasts. But when I have a new number to hit and I need a gassing up a little bit, put that new album on, pause the audiobook, and it always helps.
I saw them in Brooklyn in 2023, and it was like one of the best shows I've ever been to. So can't wait.
Yeah, I've not seen them since they first played 2000 Trees, which felt like it was eternities ago. Really? So we've got Yosemite, Turnstile are playing all day. What drinks and snacks are you having available for your athletes during the day? So during the workouts, what are you going to give them? 1 drink and 1 snack. You can have as much of it as they want, but you have to pick one of each.
See, I was going to say coffee, but then I was like, you know what? That's just not going to go good. That's not going to go well.
They can have water, obviously. They can have as much water as they want. We're not being nasty. It's not Woodstock.
Oh my God. I feel like, you know what? Just a juicy drink. A watermelon juice, I feel like always goes hard.
Oh, that sounds great. Okay, so we've got watermelon juice, and what's our like intra workout or pre-post workout snack?
Good question. Okay, so we want something with some sustenance. We're going to stay clear of smoothie bowls. We're going to stay clear of protein bars. We are going to go for, you know what? I just feel like some kind of pastry or some kind of croissant, like an almond croissant. Like, to be honest, that's one of my favorite things to eat before I train. So.
Okay, I'm for that. Watermelon, some sort of watermelon juice and an almond croissant.
Yeah.
Into that.
Yeah, perfect.
What's workout number 1?
Okay, workout number 1. I feel like we've got to get some kind of climbing in there. Obviously, we're in Yosemite, the mecca of outdoor free soloing. So I feel like a little thing involving a little scramble, different levels, different tiers. We can have obviously like belays involved and all of that. I feel like kind of like a cross country vibe, or an obstacle course, but involving the rocks and involving some other wooden frames and things to scramble over. My vibe that I'm going for is like an adult soft play, but outside.
I love that. So almost like not quite a Tough Mudder, but like something that involves scrambling and climbing and obstacles. So it's almost like workout 1 is like a mountain climbing obstacle course.
Yeah. What I'm envisioning, I went to a calisthenics park in Eindhoven in the Netherlands recently, with my partner, and they had an incredible Cali gym, but then right next to it, they had this big, like, Ninja Warrior-esque, rough around the edges kind of climbing frame course, like, setup, where there was rope, you had to climb up to it, you had to do a couple of swings, you had to, like, crawl. That's what I'm kind of imagining. And it could be, like, team-based, so it could be relay-based as well, or it could be individual.
Nice. Love that. So you can enter as a team if you don't want to do all the work. That's awesome. All right.
Yeah.
What is our second workout going to be?
We've got a bunch of running and climbing and moving. I want to do something along the lines of lifting, but I'm not sure what it could be. Maybe it's a team-based lifting event where you have to try lift the heaviest amount and shift the heaviest amount of weight in a set amount of time. But with that as well, there's a slight challenge of making sure people don't push themselves and injure themselves. So it's all working within like their capacity. But I think that could be fun as a team building activity and to just push yourself and see what you're capable of. One of my best mates does this every 31st of December. So he has a big like event at his little gym where everyone has to lift a certain amount of weight in like an hour. And then in the remaining time after that, they go for like a kilometer run and then they rest and they keep doing that for about 8 hours. So
Wow.
yeah, it's quite intense. I've never done it because I've never been here, but I feel like something along those lines could be quite fun. Like a juicy bit of heavy lifting that feels really good. And it can be lifting anything. Like it could be a squat, it could be a deadlift, it could be any kind of dumbbell movement, it could be big sandbag throws over your shoulder or carry, but something like that.
A big weight accumulation workout.
Yeah.
Where you have like a target weight to chase. That's actually really fun and you can do it any way you want. That's very cool. Love that. And then what's our final workout to see things out?
Well, see, now I want to go a bit rogue with this one because I feel like there's been a lot of like heavy movement, heavy lifting. I'm going to throw it in rogue and be like, why don't we do something to facilitate rest and recovery? So
I'm down for that.
Yeah, cool. So thought process could be a really beautiful yin yoga practice, leading you into some yoga nidra. So lying down, guided meditation, maybe then finishing could be optional with like some partner-based Thai-esque massage. There's a lot of like Thai massage works with the other person and the other body and can be similar to a little bit of like acro yoga recovery for after a session. That's what I'm kind of thinking.
That sounds like my dream. It's in a national park. Turnstile are playing. We're doing some sort of scrambly, rough around the edges, fast endurance thing. Then we're doing some heavy lifting. And then we get to like chill out a bit for the third event.
Yeah.
That's perfect. And at that point, Turnstile can play all the more like lo-fi, shoegazy stuff as well. So that works perfectly. Final question. What are we eating after the comp? What is the meal that we have afterwards?
The meal after the comp, sick. Okay. You know what? I just feel like a barbecue's got to be had. You're in Yosemite, sun is shining, beautiful outdoors weather, camping maybe after if you want to stay. So I just feel like a big barbecue with loads of different options is the way to go.
That sounds like an absolute dream. Hell yeah. Mate, thank you so much for coming on. I will put all of your links in the show notes as always so people know where to find you. Yeah, appreciate it. And it was nice to finally meet you after a few years too.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me and having a nice deep dive chat.